My boss thought he could sabotage my husband's career and get away with groping me at a work conference. He didn't know who I was married to, and he definitely didn't see what was coming next. If you've ever dreamed of watching karma hit exactly where it hurts, this story is for you. Hit that subscribe button, like this video, and stick around, because by the end, the man who tried to ruin my family's future will be begging for the exit door. My boss thought he could sabotage my husband's career and get away with groping me at a work conference. He didn't know who I was married to, and he definitely didn't see what was coming next. If you've ever dreamed of watching karma hit exactly where it hurts, this story is for you. Hit that subscribe button, like this video, and stick around, because by the end, the man who tried to ruin my family's future will be begging for the exit door. It all started with a single phone call. One I thought would be the beginning of the next chapter in my life: fresh opportunities, better pay, and a chance for my husband and me to finally step out of survival mode. My name is Natalie Pierce, and back in 1998, I was 27, with 2 kids under the age of 5, a government sales portfolio worth millions, and a hunger to prove myself. Ryan, my husband, was a corporate trainer, one of those rare people who could take the most boring software in the world and make a room full of government employees actually care about it. We'd both been working in Seattle for years, building our reputations, waiting for the right break. And when the call came from corporate headquarters in Dallas, offering us positions that felt tailor-made, we didn't hesitate. The plan was simple: I would take on major government accounts, and Ryan would train at the flagship store just a few miles from HQ. It was perfect, until we met Martin Hale. Martin was the kind of manager who thought a suit and a fake smile could hide what he really was, a man obsessed with control. I still remember our first meeting at orientation. His handshake was limp, his eyes scanning me in a way that made my skin crawl, not overt enough to call out, but enough to know I'd be keeping my guard up. He was technically Ryan's superior, not mine, and at that time, I thought that was a blessing. Ryan's teaching certification for Texas had to be sponsored by his direct manager. It was a routine thing: if you had enough college credits and relevant experience, the Texas Education Agency usually approved it quickly. But weeks went by, and nothing happened. Then we found out why. One afternoon, Ryan came home with a tight jaw and that forced calm he uses when he's trying not to explode. "Martin's dragging his feet," he said. "He hasn't filed the paperwork. He keeps saying it's not a priority right now." My stomach sank. Without that certification, Ryan couldn't legally teach the public courses he'd been hired for. Which meant Martin could use it as leverage to force him out. It wasn't incompetence, it was calculated. At first, I told myself it was just office politics. That if we kept our heads down, did our jobs, and proved ourselves, this would pass. But then came the conference. Every year, the company sent its government sales and training staff to a massive convention in Los Angeles. Thousands of people, hundreds of booths, and for me, it was a chance to connect with my biggest accounts face-to-face. For Ryan, it was an excuse to skip the chaos and stay home with the kids. Martin would be there too, representing the flagship store. The hotel was one of those sprawling places with marble floors, glass elevators, and a lobby bar that seemed like the social hub after hours. I had just checked in, exhausted from my flight, when it happened. The elevator doors slid open, and there he was, Martin Hale. He stepped in beside me, pressing the button for the top floor, where the company's block of rooms was. At first, it was small talk. Weather, the flight, the usual. Then, without warning, his hand brushed my arm. Then my waist. I stepped back, startled, but there was nowhere to go, just mirrored walls and the hum of the motor. "You know," he said, his voice low and oily, "I've been meaning to get to know you better." I froze. This was my boss's boss. The man who held my husband's career in his hands. My mind was racing. If I made a scene, he could make our lives hell. But before I could respond, he leaned closer, his hands sliding lower. I jerked away, my voice sharp. "Don't." His smile didn't falter. "Come on, Natalie. We're both adults." The elevator dinged. I stepped out without another word, heart pounding, my hands trembling with a mix of fear and fury. I wanted to believe it was a one-off, that maybe he'd had too much to drink on the flight, that it wouldn't happen again. I was wrong. That night, I was at the lobby bar with Karen, a colleague from my department, unwinding over a glass of wine. We were laughing about some ridiculous customer service request when I felt a hand on my shoulder. I turned, and there he was again. Martin. He didn't bother hiding it this time, his hand lingered, sliding down my back. "You look incredible tonight," he murmured, loud enough for Karen to hear. I stiffened. "Stop touching me." Karen shot me a look, eyebrows raised, but before I could decide whether to just walk away, Martin leaned over and glanced at my name badge. "Pierce," he read aloud, then hesitated. "Any relation to?" "Ryan Pierce," I finished for him, my voice steady. "My husband." It was like flipping a switch. The smugness drained from his face. His eyes widened, his mouth opening slightly before snapping shut. And then, without another word, he turned and walked away. I sat back in my chair, my pulse still hammering. Karen leaned in. "What was that about?" "That," I said slowly, "was my husband's manager. The one who's been blocking his certification." Her jaw dropped. "No way." "Oh yes," I said, a slow, dangerous smile spreading across my face. "And I think it's time we had a little chat with Victoria Shaw." Victoria wasn't just the training director. She was the company's only female executive. She was sharp, respected, and had a reputation for ending the careers of men who thought the rules didn't apply to them. And lucky for me, I'd worked with her before. She knew my name. That night, I drafted the kind of email that makes your hands shake as you type, not because you're scared, but because you know it's the first domino in a chain you can't stop once it falls. I told her everything. The elevator. The bar. The way Martin had been dragging his feet on Ryan's certification. How he hadn't even recognized who I was when he tried to put his hands on me. And then I hit send. I didn't know it yet, but that email was going to change everything, not just for Ryan, but for me. By morning, my inbox had a reply. Subject line, "Call me ASAP." Victoria didn't waste time on pleasantries. The second I answered, her voice came through crisp and controlled, but there was steel underneath. "Natalie, tell me everything. Don't leave anything out." So I did. Every detail. The elevator. The hand on my waist. The smug smile that vanished when he realized I was Ryan's wife. The months of deliberate stalling on Ryan's certification. As I spoke, Victoria's questions cut in with surgical precision. "Did anyone witness this at the bar?" "Yes, Karen Lopez. She saw him touch me." "Has he made any other inappropriate comments or advances before?" "No. But he's been playing games with my husband's position since day one." "I see." There was a pause, then her tone dropped. "Natalie, I've dealt with men like Martin before. They think they're untouchable until someone documents everything. I'm going to need you to put this in writing, sign it, and send it directly to me. No one else." My pulse quickened. This wasn't a brush off. This was action. Within hours, I'd emailed her a signed statement. I CC'd no one. Victoria called back in the afternoon. "Ryan's certification will be processed by the end of the week," she said flatly. "And as for Martin, leave him to me." True to her word, 3 days later, Ryan walked into my office holding a crisp envelope. "It's done," he said, disbelief in his voice. "They pushed it through." The air felt lighter. But for me, this wasn't over. Martin wasn't just some pest who'd made an unwanted move, he was a predator who thought his position made him immune. He tried to sabotage our livelihood while seeing me as fair game. That combination? Unforgivable. A week later, Martin returned from the conference early. I was in Ryan's office when he walked past. His expression was unreadable, but the way he avoided my eyes told me everything. He knew exactly who had pulled the strings to put him under scrutiny. From then on, every time I called Ryan at work, I made sure to ask his secretary to patch me through on Martin's direct line first. "Oh, sorry," I'd say sweetly when he answered. "I must have the wrong extension. Could you transfer me to Ryan?" It was petty. But it worked. Each time, there was a beat of silence, the sound of him exhaling through his nose, before the click of the transfer. I also made a point to pick Ryan up from work with our kids in tow. We'd walk right past Martin's office. Without fail, he would shut his door the moment he saw me. Sometimes, I'd linger in the hallway, chatting with Ryan's coworkers, just to watch him squirm. Ryan started noticing, too. "He's jumpy," Ryan said one night over dinner. "I asked him for extra printer paper today, just to see what he'd do, and he practically sprinted to get it for me." "That's the thing about men like him," I replied. "They only respect power. And right now, we have it." Meanwhile, behind the scenes, Victoria was maneuvering. I didn't have the full picture, but rumors started swirling about Martin being reassigned. The flagship store was the company's crown jewel, top accounts, high commissions, constant executive visits. The place Martin was headed? A struggling branch in a part of town corporate executives avoided unless they had to. Bonus potential there was practically non-existent. The day the announcement went out, I was in a meeting with my government accounts team. Karen nudged me under the table and slid her phone over. The internal memo was short and sterile. Asterisk effective immediately, Martin Hale will be transferring to our Northside location as store manager. Please join us in wishing him success in this new role, asterisk. I bit the inside of my cheek to keep from smiling. Later that week, I accidentally ran into Martin in the break room. He was pouring himself coffee, his tie slightly askew, eyes shadowed like he hadn't been sleeping well. "Congratulations on your new assignment," I said lightly, letting the words hang. His jaw tightened. "Thanks. I hear Northside has a lot of opportunities for improvement." My tone was innocent, but we both knew what I meant. He didn't reply. Just set his coffee down and left. That night, Ryan and I sat on the couch, the kids asleep, and I let myself really feel it, the slow, deliberate satisfaction of watching someone who tried to destroy us get cut down not by screaming matches or public scenes, but by quiet, calculated moves he never saw coming. "This is just the beginning," Ryan said, his eyes glinting. "I want to make every single day of his last months here feel like a reminder." I smiled. "Oh, we will." Because Martin wasn't gone yet. And until he walked out of the company for good, we were going to make sure he remembered exactly who he'd underestimated. It's one thing to see your enemy stumble. It's another to keep your foot on their shadow until they can't move without thinking of you. Martin's transfer was official, but the corporate shuffle didn't happen overnight. For weeks, he was still in and out of the flagship store, cleaning up his loose ends while supposedly preparing his successor. That gave Ryan and me a window, a rare opportunity to make each day just a little more unbearable for him. We didn't do anything illegal, or even anything that could be labeled harassment. That was the beauty of it. Everything was above board, all business, but always just personal enough to leave a sting. It started with requests. Ryan began asking Martin for the smallest, most ridiculous supplies, single packs of sticky notes, a loan replacement mousepad, one specific brand of dry erase marker in blue, never black. "Hey Martin, you got a minute? I just can't seem to find the stapler that works right. You mind grabbing one from inventory?" Martin would grit his teeth, mutter something like, "Sure, I'll get it," and disappear for 10 minutes to fetch it. Then there were the chance encounters. I would drop by Ryan's office mid-afternoon with a coffee for him and a juice box for our youngest, making sure to pass Martin's glass-walled office. Sometimes I'd tap the glass, smile brightly, and wave before continuing on. Every single time, the blinds would tilt shut within seconds. Karen got in on it too. She started making small talk with Martin in the break room, always steering the conversation toward Ryan. "Oh, Ryan's classes have been booked solid this week, isn't that great? Oh, and Natalie mentioned you were really helpful getting his supplies the other day. That must be so nice for you to have a good working relationship now." The way his jaw twitched during those moments was better than any sitcom I'd ever seen. But the real shift came from above. Victoria wasn't done tightening the screws. She started looping Ryan into meetings and email chains that Martin had once controlled, bypassing him entirely. Sometimes she'd ask Ryan for input in front of Martin, praising his insight while Martin sat silent. It was subtle, but in corporate culture, it was the equivalent of cutting his legs out from under him. Ryan and I would debrief at night like conspirators. "He's snapping at people," Ryan reported one evening, half amused. "Saw him slam his office door after a call today. And guess what? I found out they're moving his desk at Northside into a shared office with the assistant manager." I laughed. For a man who used to have a corner office with a view, that's basically exile. And the thing is, Martin knew exactly why it was happening. Not the whole scope, maybe. He probably didn't realize how many strings Victoria had pulled, but he knew it traced back to that moment in the elevator, to that night in the bar. He knew that crossing me had been the first domino, and now they were all falling. The week before his transfer date, he tried to play nice. "Hey Natalie," he said one morning as I passed him in the hall, his tone dripping with forced politeness. "How's Ryan settling in? Everything going smoothly now?" "Oh, wonderfully," I said with a smile that didn't reach my eyes. "Thanks to all your support." We both knew it wasn't gratitude. On his last official day at the flagship store, Ryan and I planned one final little twist. I showed up with both kids, each wearing tiny future employee t-shirts I'd had printed as a joke. We walked in during peak hours, the kids laughing as they ran ahead into Ryan's classroom. I lingered in the main aisle, chatting with Karen and a couple of other staffers. Martin emerged from his office carrying a box of files. The moment his eyes landed on us, his steps faltered. His lips pressed into a thin line. He didn't say a word, just veered in the opposite direction, disappearing into the stockroom. Karen leaned over and whispered, "You broke him." Maybe we had. Or maybe he'd broken himself the moment he decided his position gave him permission to take what he wanted. Either way, the satisfaction wasn't in some explosive confrontation, it was in watching him walk away knowing we'd outplayed him without ever raising our voices. That evening, I got a text from Victoria, *Northside transfer complete. No bonus for Q4 *. It wasn't the final blow. Not yet. But it was coming. And when it landed, Martin Hale would be out of this company forever. Northside was exactly what everyone in corporate whispered it was, a graveyard for careers. The accounts were small, the foot traffic sparse, and the staff turnover high enough to make HR dizzy. For Martin Hale, it was a downgrade that couldn't be spun as anything but punishment. But if he thought moving across town would mean we'd fade from his life, he was wrong. Ryan's new regional role often required him to check in with different stores, and wouldn't you know it, Northside was on the list. Every visit was another reminder to Martin that the man he'd once tried to shove out was now the one evaluating him. The first time Ryan walked into Northside, Martin was behind the counter, helping a customer troubleshoot a printer. His eyes flicked up, and for a split second, there was panic before he pasted on a smile. "Ryan," he said tightly. "Didn't know you'd be visiting today." "Yeah, I'm rotating through all the branches this quarter," Ryan replied easily. "Thought I'd see how things are going here." Things were not going well. The shelves were half-stocked, the staff looked overworked, and morale was low. Ryan took notes on everything, not because he was trying to get Martin fired, but because that was his job now. The fact that it doubled as poetic justice? That was just a perk. Meanwhile, I was busy in my own way. Government accounts often required me to liaise with training teams for specialized sessions. And guess who occasionally had to approve facility use for those? Martin. Every request I sent was perfectly professional, but always CC'd to Victoria. I made sure he knew she saw every interaction between us. One afternoon, after approving yet another request for me to use Northside's training room, Martin added a single line to his email. "Hope your husband is doing well." I stared at it for a long moment, then typed back. He is. Thriving, actually. Thanks for asking, I knew it would land like a pebble in his shoe, small, but impossible to ignore. Over the months, his updates to corporate became more clipped. Ryan heard from contacts in HR that Martin had started pushing back against directives, complaining about unrealistic expectations and micromanagement. That was code for, "I can't stand not being in control anymore." The tipping point came when Northside missed its quarterly numbers by a wide margin. No surprise there, it was a failing location before he arrived, but corporate doesn't care about context. They care about results. The missed target meant no quarterly bonus, and for a man who lived for his paycheck padding, that hit hard. One Friday evening, Ryan came home grinning. "Guess who called me today?" I raised an eyebrow. "Martin?" "Yup. Wanted to clear the air. Said he feels like there's been a misunderstanding between us and he hopes we can start fresh." I laughed out loud. Translation: he's desperate. Exactly. And you know what I told him? I told him everything's fine. No grudges. We're all just focused on doing our jobs. Ryan's grin widened. The most condescending courtesy I could muster. It was a perfect move. We weren't going to give him the satisfaction of a fight. We were going to smile, nod, and watch him sink himself. The following month, Victoria looped Ryan into a meeting about restructuring. Martin's name came up in the list of potentially redundant management positions. Ryan didn't push for or against it, he didn't need to. The numbers and his reputation spoke for themselves. By now, Martin had stopped emailing me directly. If he needed to approve something for my department, he sent it through a middle manager. The man who once thought he could corner me in an elevator couldn't even bring himself to type my name. It was almost sad. Almost. But the final move, the one that would seal his fate, was already in motion. Victoria had been quietly lobbying to merge Northside with another struggling branch. And in a merger, there's rarely room for two managers. The merger announcement hit like a thunderclap. An internal memo landed in everyone's inbox on a Monday morning, *, effective next quarter, the Northside branch will be merging with Eastgate. Staffing changes will be determined based on performance evaluations and operational needs, *. Everyone in corporate knew what that meant. 2 managers would walk in, 1 would walk out. Ryan didn't say anything to me at first, but when I saw his expression that night, I knew. "It's happening, isn't it?" I asked. He nodded slowly. "Victoria told me today. Martin's position is under review. HR's already drafting severance options." For weeks, Martin walked the halls of Northside like a man awaiting sentencing. The bravado he'd once worn like a second skin was gone, replaced by a nervous politeness that fooled no one. Employees whispered about him in the break room, speculating whether he'd survive the cut. Even Karen texted me from across town, "He's toast." The day of the evaluation meeting, Ryan sat 2 seats away from him in the conference room. Corporate execs ran through the numbers, sales trends, customer satisfaction scores, staff retention rates. Eastgate's manager had stronger results in every category. Martin's excuses about market challenges fell flat. When the meeting ended, Martin was asked to stay behind. Ryan didn't linger, but he told me later he caught the look in Martin's eyes as he realized what was coming, a mix of resignation and disbelief, like he still couldn't quite accept that his power was gone for good. 2 days later, the official email went out, * Martin Hale will be departing the company to pursue other opportunities. We thank him for his years of service, *. No fanfare. No farewell party. Just a corporate death sentence wrapped in polite language. Ryan and I celebrated quietly at home that night. Not with champagne or loud toasts, but with a slow exhale of relief. We didn't need to gloat. The satisfaction was in the knowledge that justice had played out exactly as it should, calm, methodical, inevitable. A week after his departure, I stopped by Northside for a quick meeting with the new manager. Martin's old office was empty, the nameplate gone, the desk cleared. The only thing left was a faint outline on the carpet where his chair had been. I stood there for a moment, remembering the elevator, the bar, the smug smile. And then I remembered his face when he realized I was Ryan's wife. That was the real beginning of his end. Ryan joined me at the doorway, glancing into the empty room. "Funny," he said, "how quiet it feels in here now." "Peaceful," I agreed. Like the air's finally cleared. We walked out together, leaving the office behind, our kids waiting at home. The chapter was closed. Some people think revenge has to be loud, dramatic, or immediate. But the truth? The most satisfying revenge is patient. It's watching someone slowly undo themselves while you stand back, steady, knowing you've tipped the first domino. Martin Hale had tried to sabotage our future and disrespect me in the process. In the end, he was the one without a job, without influence, and without the safety net he'd once thought was guaranteed. Justice wasn't just served, it was crafted, piece by piece, until the man who once thought he was untouchable was gone for good.